Well, hello, friends, and welcome to From Busy to Rich, the podcast designed to inspire advisors to increase their profitability and quality of life for themselves and those they serve. Today, Wes and I are joined by a very special guest who has been successful in so many areas of life, from personal life to business. And as such, she's no stranger to the nuanced challenges that we as entrepreneurs face and come with the development in all those areas. So today we're going to really spend some time on unpacking the takeaways from some hard lessons learned. So Leslie, thank you very much for being on the show, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd like to do is create some context. If you could, tell us a little bit about, if you could share with the audience and those of you watching, what is life like today? Where are you in business, family, and then some of your background, just to give them a baseline to build off of?
Yeah, so today, Vitaminis is a little over 3 years old. I had the idea in 2020. I started selling in July 2021. And there's a lot going on. So we are about to launch a third product, a third shot. So we have our immune support and we have our gut health, and I'm about to launch daily greens. We're in conversations with a few retailers to launch in early 2025. So finalizing those opportunities and really thinking about like that next phase of growth, like what will set us up for success to be able to scale, to make sure we have the performance in the retail locations, what packaging, is it working for us the way it should be in retail stores and that kind of thing. On the family side, I launched a business when I was pregnant with my fourth child. She's now 3. So I have 4 kids, 10, 9, 7, and 3. So that's always an adventure. But I think, as anyone with lots of kids knows, that you get into a rhythm and you figure it out. So things are good. I think I have different challenges now than I did at other parts of the business. Now it's about anticipating opportunities and fundraising and making sure that, the investments I'm making in the business are returning appropriately. But it's very exciting. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, this is exactly what I wanted to be doing. So it's great to be doing it.
Yeah, Wes, what's that quote you always say? A lot of the things that you once hoped for are like the things that you're experiencing now.
Yeah, we all have in our lives what we once prayed for. And sometimes, though, in the focus of the current challenges, we get focused on how big they are and what we're trying to do next. And it's always good to rewind a little bit, just like you said, Leslie, and say, hey, I do have a lot of good things that if you'd have told me back in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic when I was pregnant and that these things would be happening, I would be pretty excited about that. So still a long way you want to go, but have come a long way as well.
It's so true. Yeah, you set these goals, but then somehow you always keep moving them, so you're never quite there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you're clearly extremely accomplished in so many areas. You're a successful business owner, MBA from Harvard, mother of 4 children. Any one of those could stand alone in its own right.
Thank you.
And I think it's easy sometimes, though, at least for me, to look at people from an outside perspective and make a lot of assumptions about how somebody got to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It must have been easy or different for them. Maybe it's because it creates an excuse for me instead of actually challenging myself or seeing how those opportunities can still be there in the midst of those challenges. So what I'd like to do is rewind the clock a little bit, going back. I know you touched on a high point there of what 2020 looked like, but diving deeper into, really what were the specifics and what was the crisis point or the triggering point for you to make such a shift and decide that the best time for me to launch the business is on the heels of 2020 with the pandemic, 8 months pregnant, already have 3 kids that were clearly younger at that time, and jump into that kind of all hands on deck?
Well, the way you phrased that question, you said what made you feel like you were ready. I never felt like I was ready. So that's just the first part. On the kids side of things, I always wanted a big family. And I think with that, there's never a good time to do it, especially as a woman. It's always like, oh, maybe if I reach this level or if I have this or that, it's going to be easy. It's never easy. And I think if that's a goal for you, you just have to do it and figure it out. And I actually think that really applies to the entrepreneurship side of things as well. I think at some point You just have to leap in and trust that you will figure it out, because it's impossible to feel like you are going to do something without risk or without difficulty, especially if it's something you've never done before. And if it's something you've done 1,000 times before, it's not going to feel like a big thing that you want to go after. So I just think like I would just put that out there. But in terms of the launching the business, I was actually working. Well, first of all, rewind. I had always wanted to start a company. Like from the time I could remember, I met my husband in the entrepreneurial group in college. And I always thought like, this is so great. I want to do this, but I never actually did it. I went to business school. I kind of had this career track following, a track in corporate and things like that. And always in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, someday I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to do this. So that's just a little bit of background. While I was working in the beverage space, I saw a lot of research coming in around healthier beverages, better for you nutrition. And I've always been really into nutrition. And I'm one of these people that believes if you take care of your nutrition in your body, you can avoid being sick and that kind of thing. So those trends always caught my eye, but I was actually working in the alcohol industry. And so we weren't doing anything with that research. So it was kind of like I was learning all these skills about beverages and marketing and sales. And then I was seeing all this research that I believed in that we weren't going to act on. And I kind of lived in that space for several years. And then in just before the pandemic in 2019, I moved into the hospitality industry. And I was there for about a year at this company. We ended up basically shutting the whole company down during COVID. And it was at that point where I was kind of out of the workforce temporarily. No one was hiring. My kids' schools were closed. So I was kind of thrown into this like pseudo stay-at-home mom type of role where I was thinking about nutrition and food and all that it all kind of came together with the same challenges we've always had around getting all the nutrition from produce and whole foods is very hard. Gummy vitamins are full of sugar. Pills are difficult to swallow and hard to digest. And I just don't like them. They make me feel sick. So kind of like all came together. And I thought, where is that natural beverage or food that we know from the research consumers want? And it wasn't there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try to tinker with this. But it wasn't like, I'm going to now launch a company and never go back to the corporate world. It was more like, all right, I'm out of the workforce for a short time. I'm going to invest a small amount just to play with the idea. It's like almost like a hobby or something. So that's how it started. And it was like an amount of money that I thought if this just amounts to nothing, that's okay. And I spent a lot of my own time like talking to people and researching, which is free. So it wasn't like this big, enormous leap in the beginning.
It's super synergistic, I think, with our listener base and with me personally, because we've been a completely remote team for about 12 years, so way before the pandemic. But we kind of go through cycles. Our cycle of operations is we'll do these mid-year strategy sessions with our existing client base, and then we do year ends. So when we hit these mid-years, many times, Leslie, we might have 8 Zoom meetings with 10-minute breaks in between. And so when it comes to fueling your body through those sessions, it becomes okay, what do I go get now? Let me see if I can run in here and get this thing. And quite often the easy thing is not the healthy thing, right? It's not the thing that's actually gonna feed my body. So I love the business that you started in that it's convenient and it's a way to get to the right things in at the right times. Can you talk a little bit about that and about what the products you currently have that for a day in the life of an advisor, I could just see being a great fit?
Oh, yeah. So the 2 products that we have, the first one is immune support. I started this during the pandemic because everyone was really concerned about immunity. And this one was born of just researching what vitamins and minerals are really important for your immune system. And then looking at the foods that we generally eat, or I personally eat, and then also looking at my daily vitamin and looking at what was lacking. So this product has vitamin C, vitamin C is a pretty easy thing to get. And one of those things you can never get too much of it. But then there's also as much zinc as 4 avocados and as much magnesium as 5 cups of spinach in here. And zinc and magnesium are harder to get. They come from like dark leafy greens. Like a really good source of zinc is like oysters. It's not stuff that you're eating all the time. And I also found that my multivitamin did not have those minerals in it, or I think one of them was missing completely. The other one was a very minimal amount. And so I designed Vitaminis to try to kind of fill those gaps in a way where it's not going to replace healthy eating. It's not going to replace thinking about your overall nutrition, but it's like one more little thing you can work into your routine to make sure you're checking those boxes. I knew I didn't want any added sugar. I knew I didn't want anything artificial. And so the product is really fruit juice with vitamins in it. So there's no added sugar. It's vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, all those good things. It's literally just juice with added vitamins. So it doesn't taste like strong, and it's no refrigeration. I knew that we needed that because it was a pandemic and it needed to be shipped. So that's that product. It goes great in smoothies, throw it in your lunchbox, whatever. And but you're busy, you just grab one out of your fridge. The second product, I actually had this idea early on, but I did immune support first because of the pandemic. But this one is gut health. And it's the same idea, fruit juice. So it's a blueberry juice with banana puree. And it has as much fiber as a cup of broccoli and as much probiotics as 2 cups of yogurt. So this one is more like for regularity. If you have some people that have IBS will do it to just kind of like reset with the fiber and the probiotics for that gut microbiome. So it's kind of like how you might think about getting enough fiber in a day or doing a daily probiotic. You can kind of work this into your system as well. And it's also dairy free. So if you can't have yogurt or you don't like kombucha or that kind of thing, it's again, just fruit juice with that stuff in it. So that's kind of how I came up with it. It's meant to be family friendly. Like you can put it in your fridge and anyone can grab it and drink it or work it into their routine. And it's meant to be clean enough that you feel good about having it.
That's great. And I'd like to maybe shift gears a little bit on, so you've had a good idea. And I can't remember who said it, but they said everybody who's taken a shower has had a good idea, but it's those that get out of the shower and actually do something about it that make a difference. And there's a great quote that it's like, this could be magic. And then it says, the magic you're looking for is stuck behind the work you're avoiding. So you did a lot of work to get it to the place that it is now. And I know you got big goals and things you want to accomplish, but talk to me a little bit about the things that if you were to go back in time and tell yourself, hey, here's a couple things for you to focus on as you're building this business and as you're trying to get the word out there and get this great idea to actually be applicable in everyday life. What are some of the things that you bumped up against, that you've accomplished, that you're like, hey, this is a key thing that would probably be transferable to everybody listening today?
Yeah, I actually have this daily quote calendar, and the quote for today, it says, execution will trump knowledge every day of the week. And it's true. And I still deal with this. I think especially as a solo entrepreneur, it is very easy to just kind of not know what to do and or get stuck in sort of like a paralyzed mode. Right? No one's telling me what to do. But I mean, that would be true of any idea as well. So I think what I have done, and I've done this, I think this kind of went back to early in my career. I was a consultant. And when you're a consultant, you're kind of thrown into these situations where you don't know anything and you have to kind of figure it out. So I think that some of that probably got developed in those environments. But I try to think about like any step that I can take to move the ball forward. So you're very rarely, if ever, going to know exactly, pretty much never going to know exactly how things are going to play out or exactly what all the steps are. But if you can identify that first little step, just do it. You just have to do it, And I think it's like, do it right now, like don't allow yourself to make excuses as to why you can't do it or it's not going to work or whatever. So that brings me to like the second part of it, which is like a mindset thing. I think for me, there was a lot of, I didn't even know this about myself, but there's like a lot of kind of hesitation to put myself out there. It's like, well, who am I to come up with this vitamin drink? I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then even when you have an idea, it's like there was like this nervousness to reach out to people, send an email and get their thoughts or put it on LinkedIn or whatever. That was a really interesting experience for me because I just had to force myself to do it. And it gets easier. It's like now I blast all sorts of stuff on LinkedIn and I don't worry about it as much. But in the beginning, I had to force myself to do it. So some of the early steps I took were interviewing friends and family about the idea. So I came up with 50 people in my network. Some of them were like close friends, some of them were more like acquaintances. And I just reached out to them and said, hey, would you mind spending 15 or 20 minutes with me bouncing ideas off? And I wrote an interview guide. So it wasn't like a chit chat. It was like, I'm going to interview you. And it was like, hey, what are your challenges in your nutrition? Do you read labels? Like, what do you look for? What do you not look for? And I think having that structure what made it easier to just approach people and get it done, but it also like came out with a bunch of learnings, and there was no cost to that. The only cost was like forcing myself to reach out to people and putting it out there. And then again, once I got the ideas back, I came up with a formulation. Then I asked people to taste it. That was another hurdle. It's like, well, what if they don't like it? Who cares? Like, if they don't like it, you'll get some feedback. If they like it, great. So it's like just kind of like constantly taking that step and sort of pushing through whatever discomfort. Because if you really think about what is the risk, like the risk is manageable. It's like I was spending only amount of money that I was willing to lose. There's like maybe some risk that someone might think it was a dumb idea, but if you really think about it, that's not a big deal. So I think that mindset, you kind of have to like power through the discomfort a few times before it starts to feel normal.
It's great.
Yeah. It's funny when you're talking, a lot of what you said resonated so much because I know Wes got a different background than I do, but switching from what we did before, even into the financial industry, it's that same thing of like, well, who am I like to be qualified? I may have passed a test or something like that, but who's going to listen to me? Because it's a huge leap to make that kind of shift from something entirely different that you're known for within that community to then go jump over and do this other thing. And it can be intimidating for a lot of people, regardless of the industry, but especially from an advisor standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where these sayings come from. Like if you're only operating in your comfort zone, you're not growing. And I think you don't necessarily know what that means until you start to feel that discomfort. And even then you're like, oh, this is different. I don't know about me. This is me. And it's like, no, that's what it is. Like, you got to do it.
There's some great work out there about the art and the science of happiness. And one of the, that Arthur Brooks has put out. And one of the things that he writes, he's got a best-selling book with Oprah, and he actually teaches a class at Harvard on the science of happiness. And he talks about these 3 micronutrients of happiness, and it's enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And the one that I think we're hitting on a lot today in what we're talking about is satisfaction, because it's such a funny micronutrient of happiness, because satisfaction, literally, you can't have satisfaction unless you do or overcome hard things. And his analogy is if a student of his cheats to get an A on the test, they like the result, but there's no satisfaction in that. If they study really hard and they get a B, there's actually greater satisfaction in that, in overcoming it, which feeds their soul with more happiness. And I think one of the things that you've brought up, which is so universal across the entrepreneurial space, is we're kind of in the business of overcoming challenges, overcoming difficult things. Many times, the greatest challenge we overcome, which was what you have said, is the mindset. Is this thing in my head, this own wall of doubt that I build, that if I'm not careful, I'll just let that wall that I built by myself, this could happen. What about this? What about this? But then I think something beautiful you said is, but if that happens, if all those worst things happen, which is not probable, by the way, it's in fact very improbable, but if they did happen, how big a deal is that? And what if they don't happen? And what if I figure out a new iteration that actually drives this to increase the quality of life of the people that I want to serve along the way, and profitability, because all businesses need profit to continue to operate and grow. So I think that's a great takeaways for the audience that we have here.
Yeah, it applies to a lot of situations.
Absolutely. So next steps for you in your next jump of entrepreneurial growth. Talk to us a little bit about what you see. What's the future like?
Yeah. So like I said, right now, I'm in a little bit of a different phase of expansion, and it comes with its own new challenges and doubts and things like that. So I would love to make Vitaminis more widely available in more retail locations. I think a lot of people still like to discover foods and beverages in person. And that's funny, back in COVID times, I wasn't sure we were going to get back to this space, but it's clear now that we are. So that is a big focus for me, working with retailers, thinking about who is that right retail partner where the shopper that's in that store is going to understand the value proposition of Vitaminis and want to pay for it. And then thinking about how that works with our online presence as well. So right now, the idea is to expand the single sales in store. And then we have these little QR codes on the bottle. So if you like it, you can come to our website, join our email list, and then possibly try a 12-pack or a subscription online. So that's really my focus. But it comes with a lot of challenges. Retailers they're big corporations for the most part. And even the smaller ones, it takes a long time to get into retail. And so it's this balance of like keeping these relationships alive for sometimes like over a year or more, 18 months to try to get in there. And then also balancing multiple relationships to see kind of where you're going to hit. But then it's also expensive because once you get into that retail chain, you need to produce all the product to fill the stores. Sometimes there's costs associated with getting in, or maybe you want to provide some sampling support. And so then it's again balancing the funding and the cash and like what investment level makes sense. And am I overcommitting or am I not putting in enough, and balancing all of that. So it's an exciting time, but it's just new challenges. But it's funny because a lot of the same mindset challenges and living in this kind of like ambiguity comes back again. So I think it's great. I do now know that there is good demand for Vitaminis. Like when I started this business, I wasn't sure that was true. I thought it was great, but I can see now from our current footprint of 115 stores that people do buy it. People do like it. So there's clearly something there. And now the challenge is just how to grow and expand at the right pace without taking things too far, but also making it more widely available.
Yeah, I think that's such a good lesson of just general entrepreneurial growth. Is that we were talking about it before we started recording the show, but like we're never going to reach a place where all of a sudden we don't have to put out effort to get to that new place that we've not yet been. That our greatest opportunities to recognize our future possibilities is not about necessarily abandoning what got us where we are, but it's also not about rejecting the new things out there, the new exploration. It's about keeping the tension between the two and saying, okay, I've got this, here's where we are today, but I want to get over there. And to get over there, I've got to do new things. I've got to try on new things that are out of the comfort zone and going to be a little bit of a different kind of energy. Because I think our normal, once we get to a certain place, you can do that with muscle memory. It's just kind of like I'm efficient at it. I can roll, but we're not satisfied with that. Where we want to go is what can we do with this thing next? And to do that, we just got to challenge our operational assumptions with new ideas to expand that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's back to that like comfort zone thing. It never stops.
Totally.
Very good. Well, I'd love to just kind of wrap everything up and just make sure that you guys, our listeners, are paying attention and heard some of the key things there, at least stuff that I picked up on for me to summarize from Leslie's experience there. You can start small. You don't have to go big right out the gate. Like that was a key theme through the process. So you've just got to identify that first little step and then do it. And then another thing that was underlying there is just know the problem you're trying to solve, and also the market or the people who actually care about it. So being able to identify those two components really positions you to offer something new and different and exciting. And then mindset was another one. Don't let the stories going on inside your head about why you're not able to or shouldn't do something keep you from doing it. And then a big one is just going to be embrace the process. There's going to be discomfort along the way. Growth is cyclical. It's not necessarily linear. So just enjoy that as part of it. So we certainly hope you all enjoyed the show today. Leslie, it was such a pleasure having you on. We'll be sure to add links to the website and to your social media as well so people can continue to follow you, see your success, and then come in and try the product. We encourage you guys to all try it. Thank you all very much again, and you all take care.